I am joined this evening by Daniel, the Dungeon Master, Game Master for the Knights Who Say Chill. I'm going to actually start there first, Daniel, because it's a weird one. Do you prefer the title Dungeon Master or Game Master?
I've played for a long time, and Dungeon Master is kind of it's kind of nostalgic because it's like what I started back
Mm.
in my teens and stuff like that. But I think now I kind of like the GM better. It's a little bit more of a neutral. It's a neutral title. The Dungeon Master, like I said, nostalgic, but
Yeah.
Game Master carries less of that satanic panic.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what a nice way to kind of get into that. Like Dungeon Master, Satanic Panic. Let's talk about God.
Yes.
um, I'm gonna just very quickly mention that Daniel and I have connected through one of Daniel's players, Zool,
hmm
who is probably in chat right now as this is going out. So thanks so much, Zool, for the link here. They had amazing things to say about your world building and in particular
Oh.
your the kind of the way in which religion, gods, deities are woven into your world and the stories that your party gets to play. So as a game master who very much likes the same thing, like gods are such a big part of mine. I'm gonna start, Daniel, with a kind of a when you are when you're world building and whether it's kind of a continuation into a campaign or would say something even probably like from the start, like a brand new campaign, brand new world. Uh, is it does God come first? It's the chicken or the egg conversation. Like do
Yeah.
the gods come first and
Yeah.
then the world, or do you start with the world and then fit a pantheon into that?
I think I've done it a little bit of both ways. I've done a lot of. I prefer homebrew as much as I can, because world building is my ultimate favorite thing about being a GM. Character interaction, character hooking is a very close second, but the world building, building cultures, building, wonders of the world and things just to describe and have your players get to play in that playground is my ultimate favorite. And I would say sometimes I built worlds where the gods are first because of the concept of the world. Um, and sometimes they're secondary or even tertiary because they're not as involved in the actual concept. Like there might be a very religious component or a deific component to a specific culture, so I have to do it first. But for like the one that I did now, Ilor, for the campaign I'm running for Zool and our friends, it was really kind of a secondary kind of concept. I started them just on a continent, and then I expanded that continent and went out further and further. And then I suddenly went, wait a second, I'm to that stage that I need to start grounding this in. And cultures are religion. You know,
Mm.
even if they don't have a religion, that's a religion in itself. And so all cultures have some kind of effect of that. So um, I decided to do a kind of a really fun thing with this one. I don't know if you want to talk about that specifically, but
Yeah, let's. Yeah, if you're comfortable diving into it, yeah, let's.
yeah.
Uh,
So this is a long thing, but I've been running for decades and playing and then running, but I prefer to run now. But I've always wanted to try something, and this group is just so much fun that they'll just anytime I say, "Hey, can we try something?" They jump right on board. They're great that way. I decided because I've done worlds where I've created the gods, and I've done worlds where I've created or I've used the gods from the pantheon, like Kryn from Dragonlance, or Forgotten Realms that has so many gods, or even I did a Greek campaign where each of them were a scion of a Greek god, and I took the technology way back to just what they would have in Greek times. It was a fun concept, but that was where gods were much more present. But I always thought it would be much more fun because it feels sometimes like player characters don't or the players don't get to have a lot of I can't think of the term I want to use control, not control, but
like
um
almost agency in that space.
agency.
Yeah.
Agency is exactly the word I was thinking for. That's exactly it. So I always want to like to give more agency and more connection because if you're just sitting there playing the game, I've got to figure out how to connect you into these adventures. So what I've always wanted to do, and like I said, this group was great about it, is that I decided to do you're going to help me create the pantheon. You're each going to create a god, and then I I polished them once we were done, and I controlled a little bit of the outside edge of it. But I said, you're going to create the gods. So when you come into this world, you're going to have something that you're connected to. You don't have your character doesn't have to be connected to that god, but you have agency and you have interaction already with this. So you feel like you're already involved in the creation of this world because it's a very one-sided concept many times that the GM just presents you this world and here's all the things. But if I can get you deeper into it, you're going to have more fun because it feels like it's something you've been involved with. So we did what I would call a fantasy football draft, and we went around the table and picked different versions of our god, like purviews or components of their domain, so things like that. So I can talk about it further if you want.
You've actually kind of stumbled into something there that I'm really, really curious about, because when it kind of comes to player agency and stuff like that, it's often that thing of like, oh, it's the paladin and it's the cleric, or maybe even possibly a warlock, where you have to pick, some sort of divine, celestial, demonic, whatever it might be, entity that is going to bestow your powers upon you. But oftentimes, religion then kind of goes without any real impact.
Yeah.
So when your players are all kind of set around and they're, like, as you said, fantasy footballing their way through through this pantheon, is there something in particular that you were looking for, Daniel, then from them, or is it very much sort of open to them and let's see what we can do with it?
I really left it open. I was nervous because I'd never done it. I've been wanting to do it for probably 20 years and just finally had the chance for the right group to do it. And really, I just broke down the list of domains from 5th edition D&D, and I said, okay, here's the list. And I'm not going to assume that fantasy football is a big thing for a lot of your fandom, but we pick teams and we keep track of scores. And but one of the interesting things about that is it's called a snake draft. Is that when you get first pick, you don't get first pick every time. It goes and then person number 6 picks twice and it comes back.
Yeah.
So it's a more equitable way of drafting. So this is what we did, is that so basically the first person picked the first domain, second person picked their first domain, and as they went, they each got 3 or 4. I don't remember how many there are. I added a couple just to kind of round out the number, but basically I just kind of let them go and just had fun with it. It was one of our most fun live things we did, just because they were joking about it and they were getting involved and they're like, oh, this is what I'm picturing for my god. They were thinking about even trading, like if somebody got one that they wanted, they were willing to trade.
Okay.
And I really just said, okay, just get to the end of this and then we'll see how weird it is. If it's weird, we'll tweak it a little bit, but by a vast majority it ended up becoming very cool, that they each kind of developed a concept and it worked out. Now we had to flip one set of domains to make it completely work, but for saying that, it worked really well. And the fact is that some of these are new players and some are semi-experienced, so it runs the gamut. The newest player brought the most interesting energy to it because they have no baggage of D&D.
Yeah.
And hers was the most interesting overall. So I'll let you go there.
I'm curious then. So where your players have had that much free reign in kind of this space, if and again, if you're like, nah, that didn't happen, it didn't happen, and that's great. But has there been moments then where, they nat 20'd or they were at a temple and they called on that god expecting X, Y, and Z because, well, I made you and this is the way, and you're all, you're the goddess of knowledge and you share that knowledge, and so I expect you to share that knowledge with me. Has there been any issues then where like players have tried to I'm not going to say use that to their benefit, but I'm going to say interpret it the way they saw it versus the way you see it, or like challenging that sort of that deity in a way that you didn't see coming up?
Not really. The one difference I haven't had a lot of interaction with temples yet because a lot of the story arcs have had them, like at one point they went off onto a floating magocracy city, and the only interaction they really had with a god before that was they saw some of the death followers that were doing the rituals of taking the bodies to the temple. They saw that just as kind of like an Easter egg because it was immediately after we did it. I kind of put it in like, oh, this is kind of a cool thing. And then they the goddess of travel, we designed this special flower that indicates safe spots that she's set up for travelers, and it's a special flower that gives peace within the like a campsite. So I said I did a couple of Easter eggs. The most interaction I think we've probably had is the one character who created the death god. His his story. He started as a monk of the goddess of light, and because of a tragic story point in his background, he switched to the goddess of death, and he's the one that designed the goddess of death because I think because partially because of his background. And then subsequently within a couple of sessions, his character died, which was the which for many of these was the first character death, which is a fascinating concept when you see the first character death in a group. People that have ever experienced, I'm like, this is a big deal, guys. Take your time with this. We're going to need to talk about this. Um, he wanted to have a little bit more interaction with the whole concept, but I had something involved as a point beyond that I had to stop it. So I normally probably would have let him play a little bit in that world, but there was a there was another hook further down the road because of his death that I couldn't let him go off into that whole thing.
Okay.
If I wish I could have let him have a little bit more play in that world, but just because of the way things ended, I had to keep him on that hook a little bit longer.
If uh, I'd love to kind of, if one, I would love to talk to you a bit more about this and steal loads of your ideas, Daniel.
Absolutely.
I
D&D is open for everybody. That's what I
yeah,
love. Is
no,
yeah,
it is a thing of like I always think like the best ideas are always born out of like, oh, I see what you're doing there. I'm going to borrow that and I'm going to do this with it.
steal
And
it.
that, yeah,
I'm going to steal it. I
yeah.
mean, don't even put the borrow on it.
Uh,
Just steal it.
I'm just stealing it. I'm just flat out stealing it. But I'd love to kind of if we moved away from sort of that space where the players are creating it for just for you and your process then, um, when you are when you are thinking of gods for yourself for worlds that you are kind of
Hmm.
crafting and creating, I guess kind of what comes first for you? Like, is that God there as a narrative hook? You know, this is going to be. I guess it does kind of depend on the campaign that you're looking at, but
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
gods influence that campaign very early on for you in your pre-planning?
I would say probably not. I think I am probably one of those that unless it is a very specific campaign style, like the Greek god one, it started session one. Here is you talking to your god because somebody's attacking their pantheon, and you are their champion. Here are their powers they're bestowing upon you. Boom, there you go. That's direct god involvement. But I would say all of the other, worlds I've created, um, I would put them as much more removed, um, almost Exandrian in their way, like a Critical Role. How they're beyond that shield. Where I kind of like that concept because it gets to be very easy to be heavy-handed as a DM if your gods are walking the world. Faerun had that problem in second edition, and they eventually, when they went to third edition for D&D Forgotten Realms, they moved all their gods away because before that their gods walked the world. And it's not much fun when everything your group does can be just undone by a god walking by. So I would say they are removed. They're still interacting with their emissaries in the world, and they can still twist fate. They can still nudge the story where they need to do, and that can be very interesting. But I think it can be done very easily, be overdone very quickly.
Mm.
So I use that as a last resort. So I use them more for culture and then tweaking fate from time to time. But anything more than that, and it gets a little heavy-handed.
I guess that leads me to kind of a question then when it comes to gods and that pantheon, where do you then strike the balance, or how do you strike a balance between, you know, that interaction with the let's say like the goddess or the god of fire,
Hmm.
and I need this god to I need them to feel like a god, but at the same time, they're not going to, you know, they're not going to change the world. They're not going to rewrite the campaign. It's that sort of like you need them to feel powerful and as if they could do all these things, but they're choosing not to. Where do you strike a balance there? And I guess how do you maintain that then?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that much. I would lend towards the majesty of the character and portraying that as much as you can. But I would say it's a bit of majesty and mystery. That the balance I would strike would be that you don't know all the things that that God knows, and the thing you're asking may not be the thing that it needs to happen because it has its own plans. They have their own plans, and what you're asking for may not be in their benefit. And gods, if not anything else, are selfish.
Mm.
It's very rare to find a non-selfish God. But I would lend towards that balance of I don't want to overplay my hand, so I would be more mysterious about it, and then but still, if there's any question about the majesty and the power effect, I would lean into that and be like, you don't get to question me because you don't see the grand tapestry, you don't get to see the whole plan, you don't get to see the blueprint, and you don't have your finger on the pulse of this world that I do. So I would do magic and kind of mystery with that.
Daniel, is there something that you like a particular god, or is it that process with the kind of the drafting? Is there something that you've kind of created that you yourself are particularly proud of, or whether it be that sort of drafting process, or a particular god that you're like, that's mine. That is my uh, that's going on a shelf, like as a sort of I loved that god, or I loved that process, or that worship, or what that kind of transpired to be.
No, not so much. This is the first time I've done it, so we're still in the prototype stage. So I think there's some tweaking that I would do. Not a lot because it's worked really well, but I have felt that gap of those first ones of what happens if somebody wants something to do if something lost or fire. I don't have that many gods. I only have six, because there's only six of us. So I'm
Okay.
like, there is a gap of who covers that. So I'm like, that's an interesting theory of that next level down of taking on those conceptual ideas, and that's something I'll probably do. Um, I think the most interesting thing to this is that it drove me. It drove me. I had no idea how this world was created. I just was giving them a blank canvas to work. Here's the continent. As you expand, I'll build another continent. I'll build another one. Sometimes I go world out. I usually go world out, but this is the first time that I'm trying to go continent up or like even city up. Because we started in a city, and then they did a one shot. Some of them just wanted to try D&D. So this really came from like a one shot that turned into a five shot that turned into, hey, we want to keep going. And I'm like, okay, cool, but I didn't have anything planned. So I'm like, I got to maintain the continuity of what you guys have done, and then build out from this forest that you saved, this forest guardian. Okay, what's on the other side of that forest? Okay, what's over there? What's over there? So instead of my normal method of coming from here in, where I would look at the pantheon and I would look at like the underlying concept, like often I would use like a concept, like the world is shattered or the world is this or the sky is on fire. What makes this place cool? This is the first one that I'm going in out. And I was like, I have no idea how this world was created. I have no idea, I didn't even have a name for the world yet. So when we did this Pantheon draft, it gave me the inspiration to go, okay, now how do the gods do this? I'm like, okay, so I literally, by the time we played our next campaign, our next session, I had a creation story ready. And I read it at the start of the session. I said, okay, now that you guys have created the gods, here's the story of the gods. Here's the ages now that I've started to build, things like that. So it's just like I said at the beginning, gods influence culture, and culture influences people, and people influence the story. So what I like to do is see this whole concept of, even if they never meet a god face to face, there's the effect of those gods on this world, because the name of this world is in the old tongue that I did this, is the reason why it's named the way it is because of what the gods did. And so it's like it's given me this whole new inspiration to look at it from a different angle and go, okay, that's cool. Now I don't have to think about that early, because it gets to be pretty hollow when you think about it early. It's like It's just there, and now you have to deal with it. Now I have a reason why it's there, and that's been made it so much more fun for me.
I love that idea of sort of I think it's come up a lot, from speaking to various different creators over the last year or so with Ben and Declan on a roll, but the people we seem to have connected with all generally start small, and kind of, over time it kind of rolls out, and it feels more concrete, it feels more real, it feels more tangible. And whether that's a world with gods for a campaign, or a bookshop, or a system that people are developing, I love this idea of kind of, because we do, I think, particularly as game masters, we tend to start out here and
Mm-hmm.
then narrow it down until you end up with the people at the table. So
Yeah,
I just need your backstory, and you have to take
yeah,
that backstory. You have to make that backstory now fit into all this stuff.
yes,
I and I think I'm a bit like yourself, Daniel. I'm at this quite a long time. I enjoy it an awful lot, and I like being a player, but I do kind of prefer being in the DM's chair.
oh yeah,
It's way more fun, I think. But
100%.
yeah, I do, I've done that. I've done this is the whole world. I've made it for you. Go run around in it. Like, it's the
Yeah,
sandbox. It's, I've
yeah,
done that, and I love this idea of starting in the woods, and then we don't know what's outside those trees until
mm-hmm.
one of you takes a step out there, and we're going to add to that. And I, it actually, I think you've still, like, my last question was really like advice for uh, game masters when it comes to pantheon or religion. Um, but I love that idea though of just start there and let it kind of build out.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you could add on to that? Is there anything that you like either a lesson that you've learned when it comes to pantheons and religions in your games, or that you've seen other creators take on that you're like, that's actually, I think everyone should try a little bit of this?
Um, it's kind of related to pantheons in the way that if you have light, you have dark. Um, One thing that I've really been stressing with this group, because some of them are new, some of them are getting an understanding for D&D. I loved. I'm gonna take a step back. I love D&D. I have played it for decades. I find it to be one of the most fascinating things to do with it with a group of friends. One of my I am such a broken bird person that if I find somebody that had a bad D&D uh, uh, example or encounter, and they've stopped playing because it was their older brother and his friends, and they were bullies, and they didn't let me do anything. I'm like, come to my table. You're my broken bird. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you a better setting. I love I love teaching people how to play. I love having new players because it brings a whole new energy. Like, even if you can't do what you just asked, the energy that you just brought to that is amazing.
Mm.
Like, one of our new players just started really understanding that there are character decisions, and I saw it in her face on the screen when it happened. And I'm like, you just made a character decision. You didn't make a player decision. And it was hard because she wanted to go in the room, but her character wouldn't have. And so I love that concept. But one of the things that I'm pushing this time to come back around now now that you understand my idea, um, is safety tools. Um, I didn't understand them. I'd heard them. I really looked into it this session for this campaign and said, okay, I've got new players. I've got to get them to understand the benefits of D&D. And so I have looked at this in a way of, there is gods in my world, and they took it away from demons. So demons are a part of this story, and demons do bad things. And so I said, we're going to sit down, we're going to do safety tools, and we're going to say, okay, what are you comfortable with? Um, I'm not going to do horrible things on camera just because I want to, but if it drives the story, I need to have that freedom to do that. And so gods can do horrible things too. So anytime you have this effect on the player, you have to be like, um, there can be some brutality, there can be some abuse, there can be torture, there can be blood on the walls. I even went down to the point of, like, if I describe blood on the walls, do you want me to do that? I mean, because some people have had, you don't know what that person
Mm.
across the screen or across the table from you has ever experienced. Maybe they were abused. Maybe they were Maybe they saw a horrible thing in their life, and that's a trigger that they need to do. You have to dig that out sometimes and be like, let me know. But because of the quick ability of Pantheon and Pantheon activity to take away your agency, I would say safety tools would be the number one thing of gods, demons, anything of that level, of that power ability can very quickly make you feel like you can't do anything because they're so much more powerful than you, that I would say safety tools would be the number one thing. It'd be like, if this is a thing, like if I put you in manacles on a wall and there's a demon walking up to you and the guy beside you is getting tortured, is this a thing? Is if this god of light, doesn't let you get up and you're claustrophobic, and I describe this in a way that you have no ability to get out of this room or to even stand up in his presence, is that going to trigger anything? So I think when you're dealing with that power level compared to Boblin the Goblin, uh, he's probably not going to trigger as much,
Mhm.
but you have such an ability to just roll over players with power level that I think that safety tools would be a number one component.
I said to Daniel in my message during the week, and then before we started recording, this will take 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops. We've sat here for nearly an hour.
I love it.
I'm so sorry. Um, Last question, Daniel, and this is a kind of your space. So where can we find out more about your worlds, your gods? Where can we see your table in action?
Well, we play, three of the members that we play with. Um, all of us are from the Wheel of Time fandom. That's how we all met. It's a series of books that we all love. It's hold dear. It's a great fantasy setting. It's 14 books. It's one of the best of all time. It's on the list very often by Robert Jordan. But Amazon has done a show of it, so we all became more active and friends. Three of the people run a show called Wheel and Chill, the Wheel and Chill show, and they're content creators for the Wheel of Time fandom. Myself and now my wife, who I met through the fandom just recently, were moderators on their Discord, and we're just generally friends with them. And they pulled us in to get more involved. And then Zool is a moderator and huge active member of the fandom for Wheel of Time. And then another member, um, that's all of them. Uh, we are on there. So Wheel and Chill, you'll see us talk about it on there. If you want to look at Wheel and Chill, there is I believe on YouTube, they have a playlist for the Knights Who Say Chill. And it's also the band of the really, really, really good guys is what they call it. I'm like, okay, I don't have any control over the group, Dave. But the Knights Who Say Chill is just kind of a play off the Wheel and Chill. That's where you'll see a lot of me talk about D&D. I don't really have any other areas that I live stream on it. It's just been a lot of fun to get together and play with some friends and some nerds that want to learn about D&D and the different levels of that. So that's my general area. I do have a podcast that I just recently started with a couple of friends. It's called we just launched our first couple of episodes. It's called Me, Him, and That Other Guy. And so we found out that the group of friends, the three of us, are close. That often two of us are interested in something, and the third is that other guy that doesn't have anything to do with it. And so it's a lot about two of us. It changes constantly. So two of us are into D&D. The other guy has never played in his life. Two of us are into football. The other guy isn't as big a fan of that. So it's just all about finding that other guy and getting his interaction on the thing he doesn't know about. And so we haven't talked yet, but D&D will come up on there. So if
Okay.
you get a chance, check that out. We're having a lot of fun with that.
Because I think we both sit here for easily another hour.
Easily.
I am gonna say that's all we have time for. I'm gonna have fun editing this. But I do want to say thank you so much for your time. That was
Absolutely.
I was the amount of stuff I've written down that I'm like stealing this, writing this down, loving this, taking this.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Links to the Knights Who Say Chill and the Me, Him, and the Other Guy we will have over on the right hand side. So do
Yep.
make sure you check those out. And Daniel, until we get to sit down and chat again, I look forward to seeing more of what your pantheon gets up to uh, in the show. So we're going to leave it there. I'm going to hand back
Great.
to Ben and myself. in the present, the time's word.
Present Declan.
Present Declan is going to say hi. But thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.